Yo, what's going on, YouTube, and welcome back to Goal Line Hockey. It's your boy Kevin Forte, and we have to talk about the Vancouver Canucks. I know we've been talking about a lot about the Vancouver Canucks over the last couple of weeks, but the Vancouver Canucks, the fans wanted blood in Vancouver, and they finally got it. Sunday night at Rogers Center, Rogers Arena, whatever it's called, in downtown Vancouver, the Canucks fans lost to the Pittsburgh Penguins. They lost 4-1 at home. They had a nice little road trip, came back home, kind of foiled that homestand, and it ended with Sunday night with the fans in the stadium ringing through the arena, fire Benning. And what do? In the final 5 seconds, they throw a jersey on the ice. And usually things happen after that. We saw what happened in Montreal about a month ago. Same sort of fallout came from a fan throwing a jersey on the ice. I think that is the breaking point for a fan base. When you start, people get upset, especially the announcers during that game for the Canucks. Very disappointed in the fans for throwing the jersey on the ice. But that is almost the level of frustration I think it's gotten to in Vancouver, where that's the measures they went to. They wanted blood, and Monday morning, who's gone? The Vancouver Canucks, Jim Benning, the general manager, John Weisbrod, will be out from the Canucks, who was the assistant GM, as well as Travis Green, who formerly played for the Vancouver Canucks. He was kind of under the Linden situation with the Canucks. Obviously, he had a connection to him back in the day, in his playing days in the 90s. So Travis Green, the head coach, Jim Benning, the manager, general manager, and John Weisbrod, the assistant general manager, all let go of their duties in Vancouver on an interim basis right now, or on a short contract. The Vancouver Canucks right now have Bruce Boudreau as the current head coach of the team. His first day back on the ice. It's kind of funny watching that guy skate around, especially when he looked like he had dull skates. He kind of couldn't skate in his first practice with the team, which was obviously a little bit of an uplifting thing. But this is a huge thing for the Canucks, and they're going to be on the search for a new manager. And we've seen this from we've seen this from Bruce Boudreau in the past. You saw what he did with the Minnesota Wild. The Wild had let go of their head coach, which I believe, this kind of ties into another video I'll be doing. Mike Yeo was let go as the head coach of the Minnesota Wild. Bruce Boudreau comes in, gives a little bit of a shock to the organization, to the team in general, and he was able to propel those players forward through the rest of the season. Obviously, things didn't work long-term with Bruce in Minnesota, but I wonder if this is kind of the last straw for the Canucks, and they're going to see, is it our coaching staff, or is it the personnel on the ice? And I think what did I say a couple weeks back with that whole JT Miller thing? He's been, there's been a divide in the locker room between the rookies and the younger guys and the older veteran guys like JT Miller. There is a disconnect there. And, people have said, well, the management and the coaching can't fix that. But unfortunately, in the business side of things, it's way easier to take out a head coach and bring in a new one than it is to trade the contract of, say, a Brock Besser or one of these better players on the team. That's kind of how this works. So they're going to try this first. They're going to try this coaching thing. And as soon as the deadline comes around, we may have a pretty good idea of where the direction of the Canucks is moving forward, because this is a team that has not really had much success in the Jim Benning era. In 2014, his first season, May of 2014, he was appointed. That next season, in 2015, for the playoffs, they did make the playoffs. That was one of their 2 times making the Stanley Cup playoffs. But they lost in the first round to the Calgary Flames. Again, a geographical rival, a division rival. So that was a tough loss. Now, from 2015, 2016, 2017, and 2018, they went 4 straight years without making the Stanley Cup playoffs. Now, they did have pretty good draft classes in that spot, which makes things a little bit easier. You look at some of the guys they drafted in that really 5-year span, or really now the past 6 years, They've drafted Quinn Hughes from the University of Michigan, obviously Elias Pettersson from overseas, Vasily Podkolzin, who looks like a pretty good young prospect. This was all from them, basically from them losing. But they've also had some really bad draft picks where Jim Benning, as soon as earlier this season, kind of proved, yeah, I made a bad draft pick. You look what he did with Olli Juolevi. That was a top 5 draft pick, and they traded him for a bag of pucks before the beginning of the season. That stuff doesn't work well for coaching and management, for that matter. And this was a tough decision, I think, for the Aquilinis. They just gave an extension to Jim Benning this spring. There were some questions about him maybe leaving then. They gave him an extension. He goes out swinging, bringing in big guys, bringing in Connor Garland, Oliver Ekman-Larsson, Travis Hamonic coming back. And the mentality of the Canucks was they should be a playoff team this year. But, they fooled me once last year. Going into this season, they weren't going to fool me again. And the hype around the Vancouver Canucks, once again, has been a letdown. And they have not met the expectations that people had expected of them. This was a team in the 7 seasons of Jim Benning. They made the playoffs twice. That's not going to cut it. And he's been known to be a very good drafter. But, recently, and, he's had his problems there as well. You look at the Juolevi pick, a perfect example. You can't really miss the mark on a number 5 overall draft pick. They really dropped the ball on that one. They traded their first round pick this year. They may have been able to get a pretty good player in the top 10 there. I believe that pick went to Columbus. That was Cole Sillinger, if I'm not mistaken, or one of those guys in that vein of what the Coyotes got, or Dylan Guenther, who was the Edmonton Oil Kings prospect, an elite goal scorer that they probably weren't going to insert in the lineup this year. But we're going to look in a year from now at the difference between Connor Garland and Dylan Guenther. It's going to be pretty easy to say, yeah, the Canucks kind of messed up giving up Dylan Guenther and the Olli Juolevi thing. And obviously there's the good things in there. There's the Pettersson pick and the Hughes pick that kind of diffuse it a little bit, as we're still kind of in the wait and see with Podkolzin and Höglander. But there's definitely some reason for concern, and that ultimately is what costed Jim Benning his job. And unfortunately, this is part of the hockey market in Vancouver. This is an organization, a fan base that demands success. And when I see teams that rush themselves out of a rebuild, it never goes well. It never, ever goes well. And then you have the teams like the Edmonton Oilers in the oil change era in the early 2000s into the mid-2010s, where they were just so busy taking the first overall pick every year and never developing those players. So it's the balance of both. Either you rebuild, your rebuild takes too long, like Gar Snow with the Islanders. He just, trade them for draft picks next year. When you keep selling hope year after year after year, and you're not getting there, the process only lasts so long. And I think especially in the Canadian cities, specifically Vancouver, they have not really had any success since 1993. And we all remember what happened after that year. After they lost to the New York Rangers in the Stanley Cup Final, this organization was never the same after that. And they've had their ups, they've had their downs, obviously in the Pavel Bure era, but the Vancouver Canucks have not had consistency. So with that said, that is why the Vancouver Canucks have been so pushy about making the playoffs, especially the Aquilinis. It comes down to ownership as well. They expect, for the amount of money that they spend on this team, they expect them to be, at the very least, a competent team that is at least in the running for the Stanley Cup playoffs every season. You don't have to get in every year, but 5 of 7 seasons without the postseason is not going to lead to a successful result. And that's what happened in Vancouver. So now the question is, what is next for the Canucks? So this is kind of rough because Jim Benning's been there for almost a decade. And before that, he was with the Boston Bruins when they won that cup in 2011 as an assistant GM. John Wiesbrod was a big part of that staff. Travis Green has been here since 2017. Travis Green has been part of the Canucks organization since 2013 when he joined as the head coach of the Utica Comets. So this is a pretty big spot for the Canucks. Now, Noah Bumgarner has kind of stepped in. Oh, no, he also got let go. Apologize for that. So Chris Greer is the interim general manager right now, and Bruce Boudreau is the head coach. But long term, what are some options for the Canucks? Well, we've started here a bunch of names out of Vancouver that could be in the running for that next general manager role. Lawrence Gilman of the Toronto Maple Leafs. He's also a big part of the situation between the Maple Leafs and the Toronto Marlies of the American Hockey League. So he has a lot of fingerprints on both teams. Lawrence Gilman is kind of being groomed in Toronto to be the next general manager at some point. Now, the thing is, they kind of have Kyle Dubas there, but with the way things have kind of gone over the last couple years in Toronto, I think they've been nervous to let him go. But it sounds like Gilman may be on his way out of Toronto. Scott Mellanby, he was a big guy that was supposedly about to be named the next general manager in Montreal. And things fell through there. And now Jeff Gorton's come in, and things have kind of gone in a different direction there. So Scott Mellanby is in the conversation. Speaking of ex-Montreal players or guys that were linked to the Canadiens, Marc Bergevin, he just got let go of his job in Montreal a couple months back. He might be looking to get back into the management side of things. I think he's got that itch again, that competitive itch. There was some talk over the summer or early into the season from The Athletic that maybe he would go to the Los Angeles Kings. That was something, maybe taking over Rob Blake. That was part of the conversation. But maybe he heads up a little bit northwest into Vancouver. There could be a fit there for Bergevin. And this was the name that I thought, who wrote this? But there has been talk about the Vancouver Canucks bringing back a former general manager. And I think it's one of those things, you don't go back to something that didn't work. And I don't understand why the Canucks would be doing this. They're going back to Mike Gillis. He's been part of the organization in the past. And this is more of a head scratcher to me. I don't know if there's a connection with the Aquilinis that they would like to bring him back. It's almost like you'd rather play with the devil that you know than the devil you don't. But I don't really understand that. But that is being brought up. Honestly, out of these guys, I think Lawrence Gilman would be the best option for the Canucks. Now, the only problem is he's never been a legit general manager anywhere else. Most of these guys usually aren't. But when you're talking about Vancouver, they might need a Marc Bergevin to come in there because he has the experience in an environment where you can't have any real missteps. But that would be the big sexy hiring for the Canucks. It would make sense if they did go for Marc Bergevin, but I think Lawrence Gilman long term would be the best option for the Canucks. So with that said, guys, let me know what you think in the comment section down below. What is it going to take for the Vancouver Canucks to get back to the glory days? You could see how dejected they looked the other night, Sunday night. And this is a different team, it seems like, under Bruce Boudreau, and I think that's what they're hoping for. He's going to have to be able to kick the ass of some of the young guys like Besser, like Horvat, like Pettersson. He's going to have to get to those guys to get them motivated to come to the rink every day and to compete at a high level. And Bruce Boudreau, if there's anybody that was on the open market that was available that could do that, it's going to be big Bruce Boudreau. Guys, as always, thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you again next time.